Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa ala amma ba'd. Honorable Sheikh Abdurrahman Al-Omaisan, may Allah preserve him and protect him for us. He, Hafidhahullah, reminded us of an important matter. He started with saying what means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the provider. He subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us from His bounties subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we should keep that in mind and remember the statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Remember the statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that means and there is no bounty that you have and you possess except that it is from Allah. So everything that we have and we possess from the bounties are from the bounties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us. And so it is upon us to protect those bounties that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us, so that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keeps them upon us and gives us more by way of being grateful and thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the meaning of the ayah, and if you are grateful and thankful, then we will increase you. And so if we are grateful and thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for His bounties, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will increase us from His bounties and will keep those bounties upon us. And we can be grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we should be grateful and thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in our hearts by way of humbling ourselves and remembering the bounties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon us and being grateful and thankful in our hearts, and likewise on our tongues by mentioning those bounties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and remembering them and speaking about them, and also praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and thanking Him as well, in addition to speaking about the bounties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and also in the limbs by way of obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and by way of submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and by way of worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so one would be grateful and thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in his heart and tongue and limbs, and by that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increases one. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increases us in His bounties and His blessings that He subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded us to mention and remember His bounties upon us subhanahu wa ta'ala, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the meaning of the ayat, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the meaning of the verses, and hold on to the rope of Allah, all of you together, and do not become divided, and remember the bounty of Allah upon you. And likewise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the meaning of the ayah, and as for the bounties of your Lord upon you, then speak about them and mention them. So it is upon us to be grateful and thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to mention and remember the bounties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon us. And from the greatest bounties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon us is that He guided us. He guided us to the religion of Islam, and He guided us to the sunnah of the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, that we are upon monotheism, upon worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone with no partners, upon submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and obedience to Him, and upon following the way of the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and not following into innovations and things of misguidance. And this is from the bounties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon us. And likewise from the bounties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and there are many, we cannot count them, we cannot mention them. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He said, and from the bounties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that He gives us that which we ask Him for. That which we ask Him for. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the meaning of the ayat, and He gave you from everything that you have asked Him. We do not ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for anything except that He gives us that which we ask Him for and more. He gives us more than we ask for subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in the continuation of the ayah, in the meaning of this ayah, and if you enumerate and count the bounties of Allah, you cannot enumerate them and count them. So we cannot come close to counting and enumerating the bounties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon us. But nevertheless, we should remember them, and we should try to mention the bounties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon us. And from that, and one should know that some people, they misunderstand and they think that the bounties and the provision of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is merely food and drink, and this is not the case. Yes, those are from the bounties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but the bounties and the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon us are many. As Abu Darda radiyallahu anhu, he said that one who thinks that all of the bounties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are merely food and water, then he has fallen short, and the punishment is close to befalling him. So we should know that the bounties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are many. There are many. And from that is that He subhanahu wa ta'ala gathered us in this place upon this great worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, upon submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded us. He subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded us that when the call for the prayer is made, for the Jumu'ah prayer, that we leave buying and selling, and we leave worldly matters, and we come to the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed us to gather in this place upon the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a great bounty from Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is a great blessing that He subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. And likewise, from the bounties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that He promised one who comes in obedience to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala and in submission to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala to attend the Jumu'ah prayer, the Friday prayer, that He subhanahu wa ta'ala will give him from His provision subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He will provide him, and He subhanahu wa ta'ala is the provider. And this without a doubt is from the bounties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon us. From the bounties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon us in gathering us in this place is that we find it is bitter cold out. It is bitter cold. It's very cold out. And here we are in the comfort. We have heat and we sit comfortably and we attend Salat al-Jumu'ah. And this without a doubt is a great bounty from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And also from the greatest of bounties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon us is we gather and we listen to the verses from the Quran and the statements of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We listen to the words of Allah and the guidance of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this without a doubt is a great bounty from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gathered us in this place where we listen to the truth and to the Quran and to the Sunnah of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, rather than listening to news and to things of recent affairs and the likes of these things. And likewise, that we do not hear the cursing or speaking ill of the companions of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this without a doubt is from the bounties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned, that the bounties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon us are many, and we cannot enumerate them. And this is merely a way of remembering some of the bounties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon us. And it is upon us. And we should remember to, when we sit with our families, to remember and mention the bounties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to mention them and to praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to be grateful and thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for everything that He has given us, and to not be disgrateful and to not be ungrateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the meaning of the ayah, indeed mankind is ungrateful. Al-Hasan al-Basri rahimahullah, he said that he mentions and enumerates the harms, and he enumerates the things that befall him from hardships and other than that, and they overlook all of the bounties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He has given them. And so we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us fall from those who are grateful and thankful to Him, and from those who mention the bounties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon them. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa barak ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in.